It was a crisp November morning in Washington, D.C., and President Donald Trump was on his way to a local veterans shelter without notifying the press or public. His security team tried to dissuade him, urging him to stick to the schedule. But Trump was firm. He wanted to meet real people, hear real stories. As the motorcade slowed near a quiet street corner, Trump spotted a homeless man sitting by a weathered bench. The man held a cardboard sign that read, "Marine, still standing." "Stop the car," Trump ordered. The Secret Service exchanged uneasy glances, but followed the command. The man looked up. His face was lined with years of hardship, his beard peppered with gray. Yet he didn't recoil or act surprised. He simply lifted his hand in a salute. Trump returned the salute and stepped closer. "Marine, what's your name?" he asked. "Calvin Hayes, sir. 2nd Battalion. Discharged 12 years ago." There was a quiet dignity in Calvin, despite the tattered clothes and cold hands. Without saying a word, Calvin reached into his worn backpack and handed the president a crumpled envelope. "It's not a complaint," he said. "Just something I've carried for years. Figured it was time." Trump looked at the envelope, caught off guard. "Should I read it now?" Calvin shook his head. "When you're ready." As the motorcade resumed its journey, Trump sat silently, the envelope in his hand. Calvin's calmness, his pain, his pride, something about him stayed with Trump. He slipped the letter into his coat pocket, unaware that the contents would stir something deep inside him. Back at the White House, the envelope remained untouched on his desk for most of the day. Meetings came and went, decisions were made, papers were signed, but the envelope, marked with a faint fingerprint, sat silently, waiting. That night, long after everyone else had gone home, Trump returned to the Oval Office alone. The room was still, almost eerie. He poured a glass of water, glanced at the envelope again, and exhaled. Calvin's eyes came back to him, worn but not defeated. He carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper, folded neatly 3 times. The handwriting was sharp, measured, and meticulous, military precision. At the top it read, "To the man who could change everything, if he chooses to." Trump's brows lifted. He began to read. "I don't write this for pity. I write it because I still believe in what this country stands for. My story isn't rare. That's why it's dangerous, because it's too normal and too often ignored." Trump leaned forward, the words drawing him in. "I didn't end up on the streets because I was weak. I ended up here because systems break down and pride comes with a price. I chose food for my daughter over medication for my knee. I chose silence instead of begging. And now I'm choosing this letter instead of bitterness." Trump paused, feeling something twist in his chest. This wasn't anger. It was a window into a life, and he hadn't even reached the heart of it. "I served with pride, but I came back broken, not just physically, but inside. The system gave me pamphlets, not people. Programs, not understanding." Trump thought about the countless times he had heard about bureaucratic red tape. This letter wasn't asking for a favor. It was a quiet truth. "My wife didn't leave because she stopped loving me. She left because she couldn't watch me fall apart. My daughter was 8. She cried when I told her I had to go find myself. The truth is, I was ashamed." The honesty was overwhelming. "People see me on the sidewalk and think drugs or laziness, but no one ever asks, 'What was your rank? What did you want to be?' I wanted to teach history. I loved Lincoln, still do." Trump smiled faintly. He had a soft spot for history lovers. "I live 5 blocks from a school. Every morning I hear the bell. Sometimes I close my eyes and picture myself at the front of a classroom, chalk in, hand." Despite everything, hope hadn't completely vanished. Then came the final line. I'm not writing to ask for help. I'm writing to remind you that we're still here, and we still believe you can choose to be different. Trump leaned back, mist in his eyes. This was more than a letter. It was a reflection. That night, sleep didn't come. He lay awake, Calvin's words echoing through the quiet halls. That one line, "We still believe you can choose to be different," stayed with him. He remembered all the times he stood in front of troops, shaking hands, offering encouragement. But how many Calvins were forgotten after the parades? At 3 a.m. he got up and walked to the window. The city below was quiet, but somewhere out there, Calvin lay under a thin blanket with only the streetlight for comfort. Trump thought of his father, Fred Trump, who used to say, "Son, real strength is fixing what others walk past." He whispered the words aloud now. Fix what others leave broken. That morning he made a call, a private, unannounced meeting. No press, no fanfare, just urgency. His chief of staff arrived, puzzled and half awake. "Sir, I met a Marine yesterday, Calvin Hayes. I want every department connected to veterans in my office today. Quietly. No media." He added, "And bring someone from the VA who actually listens to veterans, not someone who only reads reports." By 10 a.m., the Roosevelt Room was filled with key personnel. No cameras, just serious faces, coffee, and notepads. Trump entered, holding the letter. "I'm going to read something," he said. He read Calvin's words aloud. The room fell into deep silence, not a single interruption. When he finished, he looked around. "Calvin Hayes lives 5 blocks from a school. He dreams of teaching. History, he's a Marine, and he's homeless." An aide quietly muttered, "There are thousands like him, sir." Trump nodded. "Exactly, and every day we treat it like it's normal. That ends today." He stood. "We don't need a new program. We need a new mindset. I want a direct outreach team. No forms, no delays. I want veterans like Calvin to be seen, not just counted." "What should we call it?" someone asked. Trump glanced at the envelope and smiled faintly. "Call it the Still Standing Initiative." The meeting ended. Everyone left with a new sense of urgency. For Trump, Calvin's letter had done more than any policy briefing ever could. It had made the numbers real. Meanwhile, Calvin returned to his regular spot, unaware that his letter had reached the highest office in the nation. A woman handed him a coffee and whispered, "Thank you for your service." He nodded politely but remained distant. He never expected change. The letter had been more for himself than anyone else, a way to release years of silent struggle. But then something unexpected happened. That afternoon, a young man in a blazer approached, not with forms or questions, but with a folding chair. He sat down beside Calvin. "Mr. Hayes, I'm with the White House. I'm here because of the President." Calvin squinted, skeptical. "He read your letter, every word. He asked us to find you." Calvin looked away. "And then what?" "We're not here with pity. We're here to listen and learn. Would you come with me, just for a warm meal and a conversation?" Calvin hesitated. His pride was heavy, but his stomach reminded him it had been 2 days since his last real meal. "I'll come, but I'm not giving a speech." The aide smiled. "That's all right. You've already said more than enough." As Calvin stood, he had no idea he was walking into the most meaningful change he'd experienced in years. They brought him to a nearby Veteran Services Center, not a cold, bureaucratic office, but a freshly restored building with warm light and comfortable chairs. No cameras, no press, just people who listened. He was offered food, new clothes, and respect. A soft-spoken social worker named Diana gently asked, "Do you mind if I ask what brought you to the streets?" Calvin exhaled. "Medical bills, PTSD, A bad knee that never healed. I stopped going to appointments because I couldn't afford cab fare. And it spiraled. And your daughter? She asked. She lives with her mom. I haven't seen her in 5 years. She was 12 the last time we spoke. Diana nodded. Would you like to see her again? Calvin's throat tightened. More than anything? She handed him a card. Let us help. No red tape. Word of Calvin's meeting reached the president. Trump read the short update and smiled. He didn't want to speak, the aide had written, but just showing up that said it all, Trump whispered to himself, still standing, and for the first time in many years, Calvin truly was. News of the letter reached other veterans. In shelters and corners where hope was rare, Calvin's story spread. A VA counselor posted, a Marine named Calvin wrote a letter to the president. Now, for the first time in years, our phones ring with real solutions, not scripts. A veteran in Detroit wrote, reading about Calvin reminded me I'm not invisible. Another from Texas added, I wrote a letter once too. Maybe it's time I send it. Though the White House never released Calvin's letter publicly, its impact moved like wind through the trees. Quiet, yet powerful. In a small town, a young history teacher named Lily came across the story on a veteran's blog. Her eyes widened when she saw the full name, Calvin Hayes, her father. She hadn't seen him since middle school. Her mother rarely mentioned him, but this felt different. She sent an email to the blog with a photo from her 10th birthday, her and her proud father in dress blues. The caption read, If anyone knows where Calvin Hayes is, tell him Lily's looking. At the center, Calvin sat sipping tea by the window when Diana approached with a smile. Calvin, she said gently, holding her tablet. She showed him the photo, a Marine in uniform holding a little girl with wild curls and a dazzling smile. The caption, If you know Calvin Hayes, tell him Lily's looking. Calvin's hands shook. His lips parted, but he said nothing. She's your daughter, isn't she? Diana asked. He nodded slowly. She was the best part of me. She still wants to find you, Diana said softly. Would you like to respond? Calvin swallowed hard. I don't even know what I'd say. Diana smiled. Start with, hello, the rest will follow. That night, Calvin sat with a counselor and began to write. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Lily, this is your father. I'm sorry it took so long.